You know, the Constitution is pretty clear, and as many have said here, it was written with the specific purpose of being a check in our system, and three branches of government and the checks and balances are really important to that. I think we always run the risk of a loss of democracy when we don't have mechanisms in place to ensure that one branch of the government can check on the other's responsibilities and duties. And I think that is exactly what's the purpose of the Constitution, the way it is written, to make sure that we can continually check the adequacy and equitability. Boy, that's a tough one. A spelling test on that one.
Yeah, in terms of the constitutional amendment, I think we're a center-right state. And I don't think it's outlandish to expect that we would have a judiciary that is more center. I'd be happy with center, but I think they're left of center, and I don't think it's representative of the state politically. I think there's a larger issue here. Everybody's talking about the check and balance. Listen, when you use the word suitability, that is an abstract term. That is very subjective, and I don't see the Supreme Court being soothsayers sitting on the high court in their black robes being able to divine what the proper amount is for education funding. That should come from the House. I don't doubt for a second that the court is well-intentioned in this regard, but well-intentioned is not good enough. We need to rely on the House to appropriate money, and if we don't get this genie back in the bottle, we are going to have a devil of a time in the years to come.
The next question will start with Susan Ruiz. What policies and initiatives do you feel the state can enact to help ensure safety of students and teachers at school?
I support the organization Moms Against, it's a longer name, I can't remember the entire name, but it's basically Moms Against, yes, Moms Demand Action, thank you. I really support their efforts into being able to enact or talk about gun laws that are sensible. And one of the things that seems to me, and I've heard from teachers, they do not want to carry guns in school. They don't want to have to be the one to, to carry the gun and make a decision about when to shoot. That isn't something that they want to do. And I know we need to keep our schools safe. But arming teachers is not the answer either. And it seems interesting to me that that if a woman wants to have an abortion, they have to go through counseling and they have to wait 24 hours before they can have that procedure. But yet we fight, the gun lobbyists fight being able to wait 3 days in order to be able to do a background check. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So I would join efforts with other people, other organizations who would be able to bring policies to the table and being able to have policies and laws that really do talk about sensible gun laws.
I consider the fact that a bill that would have lowered the age to legally carry a concealed weapon to 18 did not advance out of the Senate this year, did not pass. I consider that to be one of the highlights of this legislative session for me. One of the reasons I look back on it with some satisfaction. I voted against that amendment when it came up for a vote on the House, in the House, and I also, we had a bill that addressed stalkers who have been convicted of a felony within the last 5 years, not being able to have a gun. That passed. That was another highlight. Regarding schools, I don't support arming teachers. And I'm very glad that legislation on that did not pass and did not advance beyond committee hearings this year. Most teachers I know absolutely do not want to be expected to carry a gun at school. That's not what they went to school for. I voted for the school safety bill this year that allocated $5 million for school districts to upgrade their schools to make them more secure. That is a drop in the bucket of what is really needed to make all schools across the state secure. I believe all Shawnee Mission schools have already done that, though. But really, to address the core issues of violence in schools, we need to address mental health problems across the state, and bullying in schools is a huge problem. Schools need to do more to address bullying and identify kids who may be at risk, who might become violent.
I think for me, as a legislator, I would be in full support of some common sense gun legislation, including prohibiting bump stocks and keeping guns out of the hands of people that prove to be a danger to us, our children, our educators in schools. As a teacher with several experiences in this, I can tell you that guns in the classroom provide a whole slew of problems that I'm very opposed to. I would ask anyone who thinks that it's a good idea to spend a day in a kindergarten classroom, and I think that would surely convince you otherwise. But I also think it's really important that as we're talking about school safety, the state doesn't need to intrude over what needs to be some local decisions. Where my dad grew up in Codell, Kansas, what is safe and what we need to determine is safe is going to be different than what we, Shawnee Mission schools, need to determine is safe. So it's difficult that we're sometimes making these decisions between making the schools feel almost like a prison, maybe things that are safety measures but close off the school and make it feel as though it is not an open place. And often schools are the place for a community to gather. And I think that's really where the local decisions need to be made. But the state can do a lot to support the wide gaps we have in our gun legislation. And I would be a big advocate of a lot of those to close some of our loopholes in our areas where guns are getting in the hands of individuals that they shouldn't.
One of the big things when you look at some of these cases where we've had some shootings in these schools, these kids have a track record of behavior, their words, their actions, and there seems to be an attitude in some parts of the education community that we're supposed to tolerate this and keep, patting them on the head and saying it'll be okay, we'll look the other way on this stuff. And I think bottom line, when we have kids like this one down in Florida that really had quite a track record prior to the shooting. That kid should have been removed a long time ago from the school for the safety of the teachers, for the safety of the kids. This should have been dealt with. Part of the problem is that nobody owns that student, if you will. What's one of the first things that they ask us to do when somebody you come upon somebody that's having a heart attack? One of the first things they tell you to do, you point to somebody and say, you call 911. Somebody owns that. That's why they put that in there. And I think with these kids like Cruz down in Florida, nobody owns them. The FBI doesn't own them. The school counselors, teachers don't own them. The principal doesn't own them. The parents don't own them. Nobody's taking possession of that kid. So one thing is just first get them out of that school. I'm not sure exactly where kids like that would go, but they need to be removed so that these kids that want to learn can learn. I think that's a big piece of it. And I would agree with Linda too that I think mental health in this country is a disaster. And we should have much greater support for mental health in this country so that we can intercept these things before they come to a head like that.
First of all, I want to thank Moms Demand Action for all the work they've done the last 2 years. They really are the main reason we have been able to stop some bad bills and pass some really good bills. So when you see those people out there, thank them, because they really do make the difference up there. They have shifted the tide in our state, and they deserve a huge amount of the credit to that. Honestly, I'm lucky enough that I have one of their most active members, Joelle Hoy, in my district, and so she communicated a lot with me early on, and I will be completely honest, my beliefs have changed on certain issues over the last 2 years dealing with this by sitting down, thinking about things I've never been forced to think about, and research being presented, and they do it in such a friendly, bipartisan manner. It has made a big difference in what we are doing. How we address this, some people say the solution to guns is more guns, and I completely disagree with that. That's not the solution. That tends to just cause a lot more problems. We need to have better school security. We need to provide the resources to our schools and our school districts, financial or other, to be able to do that. We need to properly fund mental health to make sure that people who need treatment are receiving treatment. I think a big thing we should look at next year is we need to start reviewing red flag laws. Because I think you have to look at, why did this shooter do this? What could have stopped them? And in some of those cases, red flag laws are the answer to it. That's what would have stopped them if that state had that in place. I think that's what we need to really look at as one of the major things that I think is truly tangible of accomplishing in the next term.
Any other questions? I have several up here, but if you think of a question, you can give it to Catherine or just bring it directly up to me. I'm going to extend the predetermined questions section a bit just because I think we'll still be able to get through all the questions that have been written down on index cards if we do that. So the next question, we'll start with Linda Gallagher. A federal judge recently struck down the Kansas voter law, which required newly registered Kansas voters, or some newly registered Kansas voters, to show proof of citizenship when they registered. Do you support the proof of citizenship requirement? Why or why not?
No, I did not support that because it in effect, it disenfranchised many Kansans who wanted to vote. People who, at one point there were at least 30 to 40,000 people on the suspended voter list, and I'm not sure if it ever went higher than that. People who tried to register to vote but didn't have their proof of citizenship papers. And so they were in limbo until they could, in some way, get a copy of their passport or their birth certificate to the authorities to complete the process. Well, some people don't know where those documents are, or for whatever reason, they just didn't complete it. A lot of those were young people registering to vote for the very first time, and I had access to a list of people in my district who were affected that way, who were in that limbo, and there were at least almost 400 people, and many of them were first-time 18-year-olds just registering to vote for the first time. So I view that law as disenfranchising people, and that's just wrong. I don't think we have a problem in Kansas of people who aren't citizens trying to vote. We don't have a big problem in this state of people voting in more than once. And Kobach has prosecutorial authority to go after people, and I think he's convicted 1 or 2 people for a misdemeanor. I voted against that law as well.
No, I am not in support of requiring. In fact, can you ask the question one more time?
So a federal judge recently struck down the voter law, which required newly registered Kansas voters to show proof of citizenship when they registered. Do you support that proof of citizenship requirement? Why or why not?
So no. I also learned this year that the biggest group, it's a big misnomer that this is to keep us from double voting and really groups that we're afraid are taking advantage of our voting system, when in fact the biggest group that's disenfranchised are millennials. And in our District 17, that is a big concern of their parents. A lot of them have talked about that. You get out on your feet, you get your first place, and you don't have all your papers. And to have that proof is a real cumbersome ordeal. And often millennials are the reasons we're making decisions for the next 10 or 20 years in policy. And we need those voices and votes to be able to take that. I'm actually in favor of quite a few pieces of legislation to expand voting, particularly permanent absentee ballot voting, which would really support groups, a big group in District 17 that's talked to me about it, and then also same-day registration, which would also support millennials.
Yeah, no surprise. I'm going to support having some sort of standard, some sort of threshold that has to be crossed for identifying yourself and your citizenship. It's not meant to disenfranchise. It may inconvenience some people, but I don't think it's too much to ask that people have some ID to prove who they are. Now, this idea that we don't think we have a problem, how do we know we don't have a problem? I think it's worth looking at. And again, I don't think it's asking too much. We have to jump through hoops in order to drive in this state. I don't think it's asking too much for people to prove their citizenship.
I disagree with the citizenship requirement. I'm all for someone, when they show up to the poll and have to vote, having to show they are who they are. But if you could go in the state and prove to me that many non-citizens, or even a few non-citizens, are voting in our elections, then let's have the conversation about it. But no one's been able to do that. No one's been able to show that non-citizens are voting in our Kansas elections. So why are we putting a restrictive law in place when there's not a problem? But what it is doing is it is disenfranchising primarily younger people from being able to register to vote. When I was in high school, even before I was 18, I ran voter registration drives every year because I thought that's something that was really important. I was that strange kid who really liked politics. And so I was like, yeah, you guys get to get out there and vote. Actually, the year I turned 18, my younger brother turned 16 and my older brother turned 21. My mom said, you know, I'm not afraid that Reed can drink. I'm not afraid that Eric can drive. It terrifies me that you can vote now. Because she just knew how much I love politics even at an early age. I worked with some students to try to do a voter registration drive at Northwest last year, and they said it was just so difficult because of what goes through. They said it wasn't worth it. You're not getting enough. Where we would sign up hundreds when I would do it. And so we don't need that restriction. I agree with the court ruling that it was not just unneeded, but I think it did violate people's constitutional right to vote. But the main thing is they can't prove that that's a problem. So why are we making voting more difficult for people when you can't show even an issue of what you're trying to solve? We should be working towards making voting easier and more accessible for everyone with advanced ballots, with extended advanced voter registration. So I do not support the citizenship requirement.
I absolutely do not.
I do not agree with having to show proof of citizenship when you vote. I spoke a little bit earlier about my parents, and my father pressed upon us two things. One is you respect everyone and you vote. When he became a citizen, that was the thing that he cherished the most. And even when I was an adult and I had moved away, my father would call me and said, "Have you voted already?" So that was it. And I remember going with him every time he went to vote. He took me with him, and he would talk to me about the issues. And he would talk to me about the importance of voting. But I also remember that one time when he took out a little piece of paper and had to prove that he had paid to vote. And these were in the days in Texas when it was called a poll tax, and you had to pay to vote. And he would carry that piece of paper to show that he had paid to be able to vote. It's $2, but back then that was a lot of money. I don't want those days to come back, and it feels that way. It feels like that people like Kobach want to see that. It is outright discrimination, It hurts many, many different people, and it disenfranchises so many populations in the state and in the country. So, we need to make it easier to be able to vote.
Well, that will wrap up the portion of this forum where I ask predetermined questions. I have a whole stack of really good questions from the audience. I said earlier I'm going to get through all of them. Well, that was before I got a whole new stack of other questions. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get through all the questions that have been asked, but in order to try to get through as many as possible, I'm going to make a slight adjustment and say for this next round of questions, you get 1 minute to respond as opposed to 2 minutes. So our timekeeper will make that adjustment, and we'll start back with Laura Smith Everett. A couple of questions were asked from the audience regarding this. So this last legislative session, a bill legalizing state agencies' discrimination against LGBTQ families passed and was signed into law. Would you support or sponsor I'm trying to read the handwriting, I apologize. Would you support or sponsor legislation, non-discrimination, and create a protected class status for LGBTQ citizens? Let me reword that. That's what I'm having trouble. Would you support a law basically saying non-discrimination and create a protected class or status for LGBTQ citizens? I'm sorry, I butchered that question.
Yes, I think that's a really critical component of not allowing this kind of legislation to pass, is that if we can't trust our lawmakers to not discriminate through legislation, we need to advocate for LGBT community to have protected class, so that the state is doing its job of ensuring that everyone is taken care of in the state, and that we don't have bills that are doing a disservice to one group and proposing that over the benefits to another group.
I am pro-gay marriage. I'm pro-gays adopting. If this has to do with forcing religions to push through adoptions when it's against their faith, a piece of legislation like that, I could not support in any way, shape, or form.
I support a bill that would give protected class status to LGBT community. I say that publicly. I think it is a matter of time in our country. I would like that time to be sooner than later.
As a Latina lesbian, for sure I am not going to vote for something that singles out the LGBTQ community, and that feels like that was a part of that. It was trying to single out a particular group of people. And it angers me and it saddens me at the same time, because we have so many children who need loving homes. Why would anybody think that just because you were gay that you cannot provide a loving home for a child? We do need to be as a protective class, and I say that because I am someone who wants to have that protective class. I can't be fired, and so no, I would not be supportive of any legislation that would do that.
I definitely would vote for a bill to create a protected class for LGBTQ people. In my first term, Governor Brownback rescinded an executive order that Kathleen Sebelius had put into place when she was governor, that for state employees only, that they could not be discriminated against for their gender or their status. The governor rescinded that, and I disagreed with it at the time, and I would love to see that reversed either through another executive order or legislation. I voted against the adoption bill this year. I think it's just absolutely wrong that state funds be used for any services provided by a state agency that could discriminate against any class of people.
This next question will start with Jim Eshrick. If a new U.S. Supreme Court ruling sends abortion rights decisions back to the states, would you most likely vote to do one of the following? One, keep Kansas statutes relatively the same. Two, make requirements and abortion access significantly more stringent, or make requirements and abortion access significantly less stringent. How would you vote?
I would support the pro-life position. I do think one place where the pro-life group is remiss is that if we are going to be against abortion, they ought to be the biggest advocates for free reproductive health services for women so that they don't get pregnant in the first place if that's what they don't want. But I don't see that component in the mix, and I think it's a glaring omission.
I consider myself pro-life. I think the laws we have are fine now. I would have to review whatever they're presenting. Some people want a life starts at conception bill, and I would not support that because that would ban things like most contraceptives, that would make in vitro fertilization illegal. All things that I think would actually be detrimental to people, especially people trying to have children. So I'd have to review whatever they're offering as changes the law, just like I will continue to review any bill, regardless of the issue. I'm going to look at it and determine what I think is in the best interest of the district, if I agree with the bill. So I'm not sure if that is reversed, what would happen with that. But I do have a pro-life record.
I don't believe that the legislature has anything to really say about a woman's body. I don't know why it is all legislated and why women have to go what they go through in order to even have not just an abortion, but just to be able to have health care in places that will provide low-cost health care in places like Planned Parenthood. They offer so many more services other than just abortion. Women, that is a choice that women have to make. It is not a choice that the legislature should be doing.
I agree. My response when people ask me my position on abortion is that I don't think it's the business of the government or any politician. That is an issue that is between a woman and her doctor, her family, and her faith. And government needs to get out of it.
Sorry about that. As the only candidate in District 17 that has had 3 children and had the loss of a child and had to handle those discussions, I can tell you that I am a big proponent of a woman's decision being those decisions on her own and not to be intruded by the state in any way, and that it is there's a lot more gray in these issues, and so if that came down from the federal government, I don't like to speculate on non-existent litigation or legislation, but I would always advocate on the side of a woman and her privacy and her ability to make those decisions with her doctor.
This next question will start with Tom Cox. Do you support repealing the sales tax on food so hungry families can purchase more basics at the grocery store?
Absolutely. I was proud to vote in favor of reducing the food sales tax, I believe twice in the House. Sadly, though we passed it in the House, the Senate did not take it up. I think that needs to be one of the top priorities we look at next year. As revenue has continued to come in excess of what was projected, I think that is something that we can afford to look at finally. One of the arguments against it was, how do we afford this? We're not able to afford our current budget, and we're seeing that that's no longer the case. So I think that should be a top priority. Additionally, we have some other revenue issues we can look at. We can look at sports betting, we can look at like online sales tax. I think if we do look at those, we should tie them to reducing the food sales tax, because we're, I think, the second highest in the nation, and that is a travesty. We should not even be anywhere close to that.
I know.
way too many people who go to Missouri to do their grocery shopping. And, you know, I really support being able to go shop locally, you know, to any of the grocery stores around me. And we do pay way more for food. Excuse me. And I agree with Tom that that could be something that could be taken up right away. I think there would be so much support for that, and there are way too many families in the county who are suffering and who need any kind of help possible in order to be able to afford food.
I am hopeful that we will be able to lower the sales tax on food in the next legislative session. As Tom cited, we have some things, some possibilities that might allow us to do that. One of them being as a result of the Supreme Court decision on allowing states to tax internet sales, and also the Supreme Court decision on sports betting. Absolutely, food sales taxes need to come down. They are a regressive tax which affects the lower and middle class the most. And there were several attempts this year to tack an amendment onto several bills to reduce the food sales tax, but the pay-fors for them were not workable. They would have expanded or reduced exemptions, current exemptions on sales tax that were in place for a reason. I'm hopeful we can get it done finally.
I would agree with what everybody said. I think this is a big issue that penalizes the working poor and the elderly, especially. I've heard many elderly in District 17 talk about this as a real problem that they're suffering with, and it's unnecessary. We can balance out our tax system and pay for it pretty easily so that we can let people's dollars stretch a little more.
I actually agree with everyone else here. I feel like I'm part of the group now. Yeah, I think it's punitive to the poor, and I think we can do better. I don't know if I'm terribly thrilled with the sports betting piece, because that'll be just for many people, taking the money out of one pocket and putting it in somebody else's. That probably wouldn't work for me. The internet sales, though, is an interesting angle on it. That was inevitable. So, yeah, I would support reducing that tax or eliminating it on food.
This next question, we'll start with Susan Ruiz. Does any of your campaign funding come from constituents outside your district, and if so, will you identify?
I do not.
I can't get this right. I do not.
Well, I'm still working on fundraising, but I grew up in western Kansas, and so I still have family members out there, and I have received campaign funds in the past from family members who do not live in my district or even in Johnson County. I now have various friends here in Johnson County who do not